Alright, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Zaunkeonig M2K. This is a very special mouse. It's a 24 gram carbon fiber mouse. And it's absolutely insane. It's my top performer. I'm absolutely in love with it. Super excited to review this for you today. So, first things first, I just want to address the price. This at 300 euros or 350 USD is absolutely unjustifiable. You are not getting $350 of product out of this mouse. Like, no chance. As long as you get the Viper Mini or like the Burst Pro for like 30 to like $45, that like there's literally no way to get $350 of a mouse. This, like, you were paying for the engineering. You were paying for a 24 gram mouse that is made out of a brand new material. Like, you are not getting what you pay for. Like, I cannot stress this enough. If you're just a normal gamer, do not get this. Only get this if you have like an entire drawer full of mice and like a stack of mouse pads like I do. Like, only get this if you want a brand new experience that you can't get anywhere else. But I will say, for $350, I do not regret this at all. Alright, now, first things first, one of the most striking things about this mouse is, of course, the shape. It is a fingertip-only mouse. Well, I say fingertip only because that's what it's designed for, but I can actually unironically claw grip this. It looks super funny, but this is like how I normally grip. Like, see here, like the EC3? Like, this is my normal claw grip. I curl my fingers back this much when I do it. Like, this just feels good for me, like super aggressive grip, and I can do this on this mouse. It's just that my index and middle finger are curled more, but I technically can. And if you have similar sized hands that I do, like 18 by 9 centimeters, then I think this would be doable for you. It's obviously super uncomfortable, but you can if you want to. However, I would highly recommend just a standard fingertip grip. For me, I do this like aggressive, like curled fingertip, like where I also like tilt my wrist this way, and it feels incredible for this. One thing that I will say about the shape that actually surprised me and kind of threw me off is that this is like very like surprisingly wide. For a mouse this small, it's as wide. It's about as wide as something like the GPX. Like you see here, right at the center of the M2K, it's about the same width as GPX, and then if you grip it towards the top, it actually gets a little bit wider, which personally it felt really weird at first for me to adjust to, because my hand actually started cramping because I wasn't used to gripping something so wide so aggressively with my like fingers curled back so much in this fingertip grip. But after a couple days, I kind of started to like adjust a little bit and like find my footing, and it worked out really well. So I think that this would end up being a very safe shape, because even though it felt a little awkward, I'm starting to understand why they did it, because it is just a box. Anybody can get their hand into something that feels good about this, I feel. But one thing that might throw some people off, though, is the very low button height here. Like, you can see it slants down, and your fingers end up pretty low to the pad here. Like, for example, here, like, Borzi, like, complained about this in his review of the M2K, like, saying that it was too low and it created a very awkward grip. Me, personally, I'm, like, full, like, rocket jump ninja pilled. I think that low button height is absolutely better. Like, if I could get these buttons a millimeter off the pad, that would be ideal for me. But it could cause some issues, like, for some people, into putting their fingers into too aggressive of a shape. Like, if you're not used to, like, curling your fingers this much, it might feel a little awkward to have something so low that you stretch out like this. Alright, now on to the build quality. I mean, obviously, it's perfect. This is a small company. Only like 2 people assembled these mice by hand, so there's crazy attention to detail. Like, everything about it just feels incredibly high quality and like nearly flawless. The only part that's kind of weird is you can see like right here, like where like the 2 sheets of the fabric join together. You can see like little tiny imperfections on the corners here, and on this one, you can't even see it on this camera because they're very small, and you don't end up feeling them in game. But at the level of build quality this is at, that is the only like flaw I could find. It is genuinely incredible. Okay, so now onto the clicks of this mouse. These Japanese Onrods. So they're super crisp, super snappy, and honestly feel fantastic. And because the mouse is carbon fiber, you could actually like feel some of the click like reverberate through the mouse and give you more tactility. This is something I don't really experience on plastic mice. Like, a lot of times, like, the click is kind of like contained to the switch itself, but when I click this, because they are so clicky, so snappy, I could feel it kind of like in the sides here, like where I grip the mouse, which is a very unique feeling that creates a lot of tactility. Now, these still aren't my favorite because they're a little bit sharp for me. I still prefer like the Vaxi Huanos because they're like a little smoother and like a little bit like a softer on the end, like with their post travel, which I do prefer to this. But really, that's a super small complaint. I would still say that these are like my second favorite switches. Still very, very good. Okay, so now onto the feet. They're core pads. This isn't actually confirmed, but it's really easy to tell because just by just how they feel in game, and you can tell like little bits like lint like tend to build up around on the very edges of the skates, which is just like classic of the core pad adhesive. And honestly, these feet feel great. Core pads for me are a perfect match on this mouse because they're pretty fast, which I prefer, but they retain a lot of the texture of the pad. I find the core pads do this a lot more than something like Tiger Ice or like other options for skates. This is something that's really nice in this mouse specifically. I'll get into this a little bit later of like that feeling of the texture of the pad. Alright, so now onto the wheel. I would say that this is good, but not great. It has very tactical steps, like you could feel a lot of feedback through the wheel while you're moving it, but for me the steps are a little close together. Like I feel like the wheel doesn't travel much for each of the individual steps. Like you kind of see it here, it doesn't move much. This kind of reminds me of like the XM1 scroll wheel in a way, like where it's these really small but still clearly defined steps. And personally, I like my scroll wheels to be really chunky, like kind of stiff. Like Vaxi scroll wheels are my absolute favorite. I love Zaunkoenig scroll wheels. I guess I'm kind of in the minority here, but I really love that like ultra tactile feeling. So this doesn't quite give that for me because the actual steps are a little bit too small. But another positive, like really positive thing I will say about scroll is that the middle click is like insanely crispy. Like I did not know that middle clicks could get this crispy. This is by far the best middle click I've ever felt. It's perfectly tensioned to like where I don't ever accidentally hit it like while I'm just like scrolling in game, like to like jump or something from like b-hopping. But the actual click itself is light enough that it's very easy to actuate, and it's so crisp, like almost as crisp as like each like the left and right buttons. This is better than some of the mouse's like main clicks. And now the entire gimmick about the scroll is that it's ceramic coated. Honestly, I don't notice while in like normal use. It just feels like a scroll wheel. Like if I move my finger side to side, I can notice that it is very like grippy. It does have like a different feel to it. So it kind of reminds me of like the Cone Pro Air scroll wheel, like in that way. Like you can tell it is made of a different material when you rub it side to side like this. But really, like during any normal use, it's just a scroll wheel. Like it feels good, but it's not like, oh, ceramic. It's like something crazy. It's just a scroll wheel. Okay, so now onto the sensor, 3360, so it's a perfect sensor, nothing really to talk about. But what's special with this one is that it's modified up to 8,000 hertz. I say up to because it's not consistent, like something like a Razer implementation, like where it's constant 8,000. But like as you move and like as like the PC like receives more inputs, it ramps all the way up to 8,000. Now I wasn't able to use 8,000 in game. I had to go down to 4K, but it still felt really good. It's a very small difference compared to 1,000 hertz, but it still just feels like crisp. It's something that's very hard to put your finger on, and it's something you really only experience when you feel it. But like just going to a different mouse, I just pick up the M2K, and it just like even just moving my mouse around on the desktop, like it's just ever so slightly smoother, which honestly feels fantastic. But one negative thing about the sensor is that it is a 3360, so I do experience spinouts on the Artisan Light and Mid, which actually kind of sucks because I do like that combo with this mouse, but I get spinout, so it's just completely unusable, so that kind of sucks. So if you're like a hardcore Light-in user, then I would recommend actually against this because it's just not usable. Alright, so now that I've said a bunch of positive things about this, I need to go on to the absolute hugest negative. This cable is straight dog shit. Like, on any other mouse, this would actually be a pretty godly cable because it's super light, and the actual like rubber coating itself makes it so that it doesn't ever drag on a pad. It's like here, I just have a Skype out like for the purpose of just like recording this, and I never experienced like the pad ever catching on it, and then even on other like cloth surfaces, even rough surfaces that could like catch on some cords. This like I don't feel the drag at all. It's incredible, and it's super light, so it doesn't add any weight to the mouse. However, like I already showed you, it is super inflexible. It's so AIDS. I cannot overstate how terrible this feels on this mouse because it's already so light that it doesn't feel like you're using anything. It just feels like you're using your hand, but then this cable just slaps you in the face. Every movement you feel the cable. It is impossible to get rid of it. Now, with my personal management solution, I found that if I tape it up to the back of my monitor here and like put it off the side, so like my cable is like right behind, and then it goes around, and then it like wraps here into the mouse. I found that with this solution, it feels very consistent. So the actual force that is applied on the mouse is very like normalized. Like it almost always feels the same, like a very consistent amount of just tug right in the front. So I can get used to it in this configuration. However, getting used to a cable, super fucking cringe. I absolutely hate it. It sucks. It is by far the worst thing about this mouse. If this had like a true like aftermarket paracord on it, or even better yet, just wireless at the same weight, I don't see how you could really improve it, except like maybe like changing the shape a little bit. But it is just so close to perfect. Okay, but despite this cable, this mouse is absolutely insane. It is going to be my main for the foreseeable future, because I perform by far the best on it. I am the most confident. It is just the best mouse for me right now, like bar none. It's just fucking nuts. So one thing to keep in mind is that I did have a pretty long adjustment period with this. Even on the first like few days, I was still hitting crazy shots because like the low weight just feels so effortless for aiming that I still had some like nasty peaks, but I was really inconsistent and honestly just felt very uncomfortable for about like a week. And then after a week in, I started to feel it. I started to kind of feel a rhythm and like get used to it, and I started to like regain that confidence. And then after like about like that 2 to 3 week window, and then like right now in like the 3 to 4 week window, I am absolutely 100% confident. It feels great. I'm performing my best. It is just absolutely nuts. Like my Kovac scores, for example. I recently hit Voltaic Grandmaster for all the reactive tracking scenarios, and that is something that I like freshly got on this mouse. Like I noticed that with my reactive movements, like those little like adjustments I'm doing, like to like read like the directional change of like the bots is just absolutely nuts on this. It feels so effortless to just snap back when they change direction. It is a genuinely incredible feeling. I am hitting like new mechanical peaks. And my biggest takeaway like from using this mouse in game is this feeling of like complete connectedness. I know this sounds so corny, but it feels like I'm not using a mouse at all. Like because the actual shape is so safe and my grip is like so like calm with this fingertip that like when I'm in game, it doesn't feel like I'm using a mouse at all. So aiming is just using my hand, and this allows me to completely focus on the actual like game that I'm playing. I could like zero in on like what I need to do, like what I actually need to do to like frag out, instead of focusing on like using a tool. So this just like it seriously it just puts me into another level. I love this in game. It feels so intuitive. It feels so sharp. All my movements are so precise, and I could just focus completely on the game I'm playing, which is something I have not found with any other mouse. It just feels so effortless. Now, another like a huge positive about this is something I kind of touched on a little bit earlier with the feet, that you get a ton of feedback through this mouse. Because of the core pads, you already get a lot of texture, and because of the super lightweight and the carbon fiber, you feel all the little bits of texture in the pads, so you get a ton of feedback. So like Skypad that I have here, on like a little bit of like the frosted surface, you can feel all those tiny little bumps, and it's just a crazy feeling. You get so much feedback while using this that once again, you feel so connected to your movements. I would also describe all your movements as feeling very detailed because of this, because you get so much textured feedback that you know exactly where you're going. So all your micro adjustments are just like feel so pixel perfect. Like even like a 30 cm that I play on, I feel I'm more precise than like a 50 on some other mice, because I'm just all those little tiny movements feel so good because of the feedback I get. It is just insane. However, the one drawback is that, of course, I don't get as much stability that I would get out of another mouse. So one of my current like favorite wired mice here is the EC3C, because I get this great feeling of stability because like the ergo shape, like it kind of fills out my hand here and gets me in this like a claw fingertip hybrid. And that honestly just feels super nice because I'm able to reinforce myself right here and here on the mouse. It gives me a lot of stability that just adds a little bit of consistency to my play. This, I don't get that because I am just kind of floating here, like no part of my hand here touches. So I do feel slightly less like locked in, I would describe it. This is probably partly because I'm not like a natural fingertip player. I'm natural like a claw hybrid player. So I bet if you're just like a full-on fingertip, this just straight up won't be an issue for you, and you'll get all your stability right back. But I'm still like learning it. I've only had this mouse for like I think 4 weeks now, so still like kind of getting into the flow. But the amount of control I have completely makes up for the lack of stability. Like it almost just doesn't matter that I like feel kind of shaky on this, because just my control is so good that it just more than makes up for it. Like it is just the best for me in aim for every single category. Okay, so now I'll move on to pad combos. Like I already touched on before, I think that a very heavily textured surface is absolutely the best for this, because you do get so much feedback. Like my current main, which is currently underneath my skypad right now, is the X10 control, and I think it is absolutely a godly combo with this pad. Because the rough surface, you get all the feedback, the micro adjustments on the X10 feel incredible, there's a bunch of stopping power for you, and it is just a perfect example. I would highly recommend M2K X10. I mean, however, that is an extremely expensive combo. Don't get that if you're just a gamer, just like peripheral addicts only for that one. But in general, just anything with texture and some control feels great. I will say that a speed pad with some texture also feels good, like the skypad I have here, but it feels a little less practical. Like, it's very fun, but like, holy cow, it is like slippery and fast, and it just like creates a lot of like, I feel I have to be very like manually controlled on like a fast pad with the M2K, which kind of takes me out of that feeling of effortlessness that I was talking about earlier. When I have a control pad like the XN control, like my entire setup just disappears. I'm just playing a game. With this, it's extremely fun. It feels so fast, so snappy, but I have to focus a little bit too hard to actually perform well, so it's not my go-to. Alright, so that is about it. This mouse, I honestly cannot recommend it enough. I do not regret my purchase whatsoever. This is absolutely fucking insane. Love this mouse. It's going to be my main for the foreseeable future. The only thing I think that can beat this is like a Starlight maybe. I'll probably try to get it on the next drop. But until then, I don't see anything beating this. It just feels incredible. If you already have a drawer of mice and you don't mind just burning money on something, honestly, I would recommend this mouse. It feels crazy. It's going to be an experience like no other. I just love this mouse. It's so hard to put into words. It's just crazy. Thank you for watching.